ends up, I don't know if anybody heard me say anything. Did I say anything when the mic was on? I'm pretty sure I was quiet the whole time. All right, it's the Handoff. Glenn Clark, Thyrl Nelson with you on WNST.net. Handoff brought to you today as it is every in the Towson Place Shopping Center, just across from Walmart. 10% today, as Thyrl likes to call it. 10% discount on all purchases of $20 or more for all WNST listeners. Just stop in and see them in the Towson Place Shopping Center, just across from Walmart. And we've got a new location, a spin-off, if you will. That's what we call it in the broadcasting world, a spin-off. Angel's Cut Wine and Spirits in Ellicott City, 5725 Richards Valley Road. Same great deals, same great ownership. Go see them at Towson Place Liquors or at Angel's Cut Wine and Spirits in Ellicott City. Thyrl, I was prepared and ready to go. You clearly once again flustered, didn't you?
I was going to say, man, that was an unbelievably quick break, but not only that, man, it, I'm sure fans appreciate that, we get back to talking quite quickly rather than drag things out, but on the other side of that, it gives fans very little appreciation of just how cool you are, Glenn Clark.
Well, I'm a broadcaster.
You come across, your persona is one thing, man, but if folks just saw, the way that pressure fails to get to you, man, it's impressive, bro. It's one of the real highlights of my week is to watch you just sort of operate under pressure.
No, please keep going. Tell me more.
Right.
Tell me more.
That's
I'm looking for whatever I can soak in. Hey, the Box Hill crab cakes are here. God, I've already housed one, and
yeah.
Here's the problem: like you enjoy Box Hill crab cakes so much that as you finish it, you're like, well, I might. There's more out there. I mean, I might go back out for a second. And then you realize that you just ate the largest crab cake ever known to man.
Right.
And
if you grab for another, you might wind up in a wrestling match,
Oh, well, that's true, too. But Box Hill crab cake's unbelievable. Go see them. Box Hill Shopping Center, just off 924. Box Hill Pizzeria has other good food, subs, salads, pizza.
I was going to say, I don't know if I'm talking out of turn. They brought pizza yesterday. It is flaky, buttery crust.
Pizza yesterday.
They brought pizza last week. I'm sorry, the last time they were out. I know it's about the crab cakes there, and it's one of those things where you can't go to Box Hill and not get crab cakes, but
correct.
If you've been there for crab cakes over and over, get yourself a pizza to go. I'm sure it heats up very well as well, but man, dare I say, it's the first time I tasted their pizza. Delicious.
I can count. I've probably been to Box Hill Pizzeria. I've been in, and I'm not counting just times that I've had Box Hill crab cakes. Because if I counted that, the number would be pushing 1,000.
Fair enough.
I've probably been to Box Hill Pizzeria. It's triple digits. Okay. I know that much. That's how much in my life I've gone to Box Hill Pizzeria. Right. And 95% of the time I got a crab cake.
Yeah, you go to a steakhouse, you get a steak. You go to Box Hill Pizzeria, you get the crab cake. But man, I mean, they almost ought to open up a separate place for the pizza because it is outstanding as well.
I don't know. I mean, I like them both.
Could you crumple a crab cake on top of a pizza, you think?
I tried it with the salad.
Okay.
Their house salad with the feta cheese and
that's gotta work.
You crumple a crab cake on that, you're in for a treat.
I put mine on a sub roll last week. A little lettuce, tomato.
How was that?
It was fantastic. How could it not be
Yeah,
fantastic?
I know. But it's really good just sitting there.
Right.
You don't need to do anything.
And can I tell you this?
You almost feel like it's blasphemous when you mutilate a Box Hill crab cake because you're just like, this thing, this concoction in all of its glory stands next to any food creation of all time.
Well, and to further sort of cement that, as I say, I made a sub out of mine last week. I was generous with the meat. 2/3 of the crab cake covered the sub roll.
Of course it did.
So I had a little additional crab cake on the side.
All right, I got some things for you today. We'll see if we get to all of them. We may or may not. It's just what it is. Number one, you and I were talking a little off the air a little bit earlier today about Mike Krzyzewski and his whining about rushing the floor. Look, this is the tough part for me. Mike Krzyzewski is absolutely right about the dangers of floor rushing. It is a very dangerous thing, and I'm almost stunned that through all these years we've never had a more unfortunate accident, story, tragedy perhaps, related to either a floor rushing or a field
rushing in college athletics. Now,
NC State had the little incident with the kid in the wheelchair, which turned into a pretty nice PR.
It was okay, yeah.
Well, and you know, it's funny because you say accident. You think about the angry mob that sort of reacts to, you know, the polarizing figure that Duke is, the mob mentality that sort of persists, and you know, hard to believe that in the thousands of students that rush the floor, that, you know, not once does a guy feel compelled to, you know, maybe take a pop shot at somebody.
Right. Well,
it could happen.
Coach K, namely, yes.
Yeah, him too.
Right.
He seems to be the easiest mark out there for sure, and the most polarizing guy.
And the flip side of that being that, you know, there's all this. It's real. The hostility that's pent up by opposing students because of what it is that Duke represents.
Yeah.
The elitism, all of that. You know, I would have wanted to go to your school, but you would have never accepted me because I don't have a trust fund.
Right.
Because that all of that hostility, you're a little bit surprised has never. If I can get within 10 feet, I'm taking a shot at somebody. Now, for the most part, you say, and especially reading over what happened last night at Virginia. Virginia had gone out of their way to set up a safe way for Duke players and coaches to exit the floor. They had set up what they labeled a safe zone.
Okay.
And I didn't notice any of this as it was unfolding. In fact, I didn't even stay to watch the end of the game because it wasn't really in doubt.
Right.
I knew Virginia was winning the game. And
yeah.
That's what it is.
They put them on the line a couple of times. I mean, they tried to make it close, but, yeah, they were getting handled pretty well.
Correct. So I just find myself, I don't know if fascinated is the right word. I find myself caught up in how to handle this situation. Mike Krzyzewski's right. There is a safety hazard, and he's thinking about, and he said this, what if someone yelled out, hey, Coach K, F your mother.
Right.
Or I F'd your wife and daughter last night.
That's fair game, I think.
Well,
right.
I mean, at that point, right, correct. If you're in his shoes, how could you not turn around and deck a guy? How could you not? Now, it's his area that he can't.
Right.
But there's a really human aspect to it where you're like, okay, I get it. Now, the same thing could be said. By the way, Mike, you might have to walk down the street at some point. And when you do, someone might yell out the same thing.
Sure.
Like, you can't always be surrounded by the twice washed. You sometimes have to surround yourself with the unwashed in your life. It's just the way that it works. So if you can't handle that, that's on you, not on anyone else. It is absolutely an issue related to rite of passage that schools, students aren't just going to voluntarily give it up. Right. They're not, because part of going to Maryland, part of going to Virginia, part of going to that is, I think that at some point in my 4 years here, if I make it for 4 years, I think that at some point in that tenure, I'm going to have an opportunity to celebrate the way that my older brother did, the way that my friend's sister. Boy, you know what's funny? I rushed a floor and I couldn't even tell you when it was.
Okay.
I know I've rushed a floor. I've been to Maryland Duke games. I didn't do it every time.
Right.
I've been to games where other students rush floors and I did not. I've done that too.
Yeah.
Where I was just farther up and I just didn't. It wasn't worth it to me, and I can't even think of. I remember you know what? Actually, this is true. I was involved in one of the more pathetic floor rushings ever. It was like after, I think Boston College got off to like an undefeated start one season.
Yeah.
And so they had somehow.
Troy Bell or something like that?
Yeah, something like that. And they had like somehow managed to get their way all the way up to like number 4, number 5.
That would have had to have been Troy Bell.
Maybe not even that high. Maybe it was more like number 8 or something like that. And I want to say Maryland was their first loss of the season.
Okay.
And it was like 100 kids rushed the floor, and I just happened to be sitting in the front row for that game. So I'm like, okay, and then I looked around. I'm like, where'd everybody else go?
they set you up.
I thought we were more excited about this one. So I don't know, but to me, I understood it. I definitely understood it because I got the feeling of, you know, this is what we do. We like rushing the floor. We like rushing the field. We like doing it. It's something everybody else got to do that went here, and we want to do it too.
And I say, man, and you know, I guess it was the first or second year of the Phrygian era. Terps beat Virginia, I want to say. It wasn't even a tremendous game, but, you know, the Phrygian era still had its novelty. They were getting guys down to sing the alma mater, that type of stuff. And as it became apparent that Maryland was going to win the game, you start to see guys, and you see this at the basketball games also, like you start to position yourself to be able to rush the court. And as these guys were preparing to rush the field, the security people, the hired guys in yellow jackets, were sort of positioning themselves to tackle guys and make some and they couldn't get them all. They weren't a deterrent, and what it wound up being was a lot of ugly physical violence impacted on those that, you know, the security guys felt like they could get away with.
This is always going to be really difficult.
It's sort of an ugly, sir. You can't really prevent it, I don't think. Right. You have to come up with a safe way to make it acceptable for everyone. And you start to feel for Duke every time they get beat this year.
Well, correct.
The other team rushes the floor.
That's the way it's going to be. When they lose a game, they're going to have the floor. If they're going to be this good. Now, if Duke for the next 3 years just wasn't very good, that would all. For the first year, people would still rush the floor, but at some point they would stop doing it. You know? Maryland's lost games where the other team rushed the floor on them in the past because they were really good.
Right. When you got that little number, single digits next to your name, it happens.
It's just the way it is. It's part of being one of those teams. If you have to accept, it's the same way that you have to accept you're going to get the best from everyone. And there's elements of truth to what the women's coach was spouting off that night when.
What would they be without Duke?
Yeah, I mean, there are a handful of buildings across the country where their best night of the year is going to be the night that Duke comes into town. And that's just the way it is because Duke is the Yankees in college basketball. We want to go see that game in hopes that our team will be able to pull off the win because if they are, we want to make sure we're there for that. That's what it is. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, that's the relation for it. I've never thought there was an easy answer to it. I'm sort of with you. The SEC system is interesting because the SEC system is a fine system for the school. First infraction is like $5,000. Second infraction is like $25,000.
Really?
Third one is like $35,000. Now, that seems like a lot of money, but
for the school,
how much money would you have to pay in order to enforce a level of security that made sure no one could possibly get onto the floor?
What kind of ugliness follows after that, too? Like, yeah.
You know, how much money would that cost? So you're better off just saying, screw it, come rush the floor, we'll pay the $25,000. Right. You know, what the hell, who cares? You know what I mean? Apparently, according to Andy Katz, some ACC athletic director, and he said that he couldn't let it be known who it was, said that the league would revisit that rule system for rushing the floor and for how to handle it.
And once upon a time, man, in the 70s, certain venues, I guess, and certain states, I think, passed laws to stop general admission entry to concerts because of the potential to get guys trampled. And so when it was football, when I was watching it, guys are spilling out over the seats and over the edge and coming from. But in a basketball arena, the majority of your traffic is coming down 6 or so ramps, and so if you're a guy who is there as the deterrent, if you're the security guard who tackles the first guy in that line, you and several others could wind up getting trampled there.
At some point, it's got to be established that you can't do it anymore. Yeah. At some point, if you eliminate it, then early on it's a problem because schools there are going to be student bodies that are still going to attempt to do it. They're just going to say, well, there's more of us than there are you. We're going to figure out a way. And Lord, if you told every college student that they would be arrested for doing something, I think we've seen over the years, that's probably not going to be much of a deterrent from them doing it. That's just the way it is, that you're dealing with a group of people that's not going to care a whole heck of a lot if they have to spend the night in jail and pay some sort of fine for
badge of honor.
A public, it's I went to college and I really went to college. Yeah. Whereas when you went to college, all you did was go to class.
Right.
You're a bunch of losers.
Right.
I
got thrown in jail for my school spirit.
Experience. I was Mr. Tech U. That was me. I was the guy. So in a way, it might in fact even encourage more people to rush the floor.
Tech U. I sort of like that as a profanity.
What were the two schools that were competing for Jesus Shuttleworth and he got game?
Oh, man.
I feel like one was Big State.
Okay.
And the other one, I think, was Tech U.
Okay.
I feel like those are the two schools. And I could be wrong about that. And if I am, someone please email me to correct me as quickly as possible. But I always remember that being like they couldn't have come up with fake schools that had better names.
Right.
It was such a great freaking movie.
Friday Night Lights, everybody wants to play for TMU, Texas Methodist University.
Right, which of course obviously doesn't exist.
Right, yeah.
And it wasn't at Texas State in Necessary Roughness, which is now a school, but at the time was not the name of a school. Right. Maryland State would be the perfect example of something like this, or Maryland Tech, or you would use something like that in the movie. But I'm pretty sure in He Got Game they used Big State U or Big State and Tech U.
There you go.
But I could be wrong. If I am,
no, that's good stuff.
If I am, I apologize. But but at some point, like nobody rushes the floor after an NBA game. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't happen. Now part of that is because you're dealing with a different
demographic.
Correct. There is no question. The people that are near the floor are more the wine and cheese crowd. I told you I sat courtside at the Pacers game last Friday, and I sort of looked around, and there was maybe one rowdy in the entire.
Is that right?
There were fans. There were people that were wearing jerseys, and there were children that were clapping. But there was one drunken rowdy in the entire 2-section area where I was. I looked around and I said, boy, this is the one guy that's come down here that would be that type of guy. So that crowd just doesn't exist in those places in order to rush the floor. But you don't see it in a lot of places. Is it just a case of you threaten students, if you keep doing this, we're going to move your seats off the floor? You're not going to have floor access? You're going to... I don't know the way it is that you handle it, because you're always going to have students. They're always going to be amped up. They're probably there's going to be alcohol involved. Maybe not during the game, but at some point they're going to have consumed alcohol during the course of a day. They don't have to worry about how they're getting home that night, anything like that.
You could almost go to the Sports Illustrated pictures that they do, the panoramas of the stadiums, where you can go find yourself in the seating bowl if you happen to be at this particular event. Maryland, I know, does a pretty good job of accounting for who is going to games, and that they put in, correct me if I'm wrong on this, but they put in that system a couple of years ago where, going to volleyball games and going to field hockey games gave you a bit of a leg up in terms of priority on being able to get desirable
point system.
And basketball. So I think
it doesn't have anything to do with seats.
Well, no, I think that it would come down to the point where you say, man, we can't catch everyone, but in the event that we can get you on film, then we're going to revoke your seats or your ability to get seats for the remainder of this year.
Yeah, but if for Maryland basketball or for Maryland students, as long as they got to be there to rush the floor, that probably wouldn't.
For Duke, right? There's only one game a year I care about going to.
Right.
Anyway,
you're telling me I'm going to miss the Clemson game?
Right.
Oh, God, that is just too bad.
Yeah, I don't know how you punish.
Breaking news, I wasn't going anywhere.
Right.
I got all those points all year to make sure I could go to the Duke game.
Yeah, well, and part of it is about...
It's not going to be a Duke game ever again.
Yeah.
So not really going to be an issue.
We can put that issue to bed. Right.
Not really going to be an issue. I don't... Look, it's not as black and white as saying that you never have a floor rushing ever. I think that's being far too... although, look, if they really want it to be that way, they are capable of figuring out how to make it that way.
Well,
they really are.
As we were talking about earlier today, when Roy Williams took proactive measures to get his high-profile guys off the floor, we sort of criticized him for that too.
Yeah, but I think the other area is, if you're trying to dismiss this as this is just Coach K bitching, he sounds like a baby doing it after he loses. Let me complain about.
I feel for him, and I don't feel for him often, but
there is absolute truth to it. And if you try to dismiss what he's saying, you're just doing it because you don't like Duke, which I get it. I don't like Duke. And 19-year-old Glenn probably would say, up yours, you loser. Right. There's absolute truth to safety and whether or not it's a good idea. It's part of the reason why, I used to love the HF Festival. Was the biggest thing ever for me growing up. You know what I mean? It was just, it was my era. Like every year we would camp out for tickets because otherwise you couldn't get them. And I would go down in the mosh pits, and I remember Green Day lighting their drums on fire, and just everything about it was me. That age, it was the right time. It was everywhere from when I was like 11 to the time I graduated from high school, even the first couple years of college. It was my thing every year. If it came back, I would probably still like a lot of the bands that would play the thing, but there's a zippy chance you'd see me wander into right in front of the stage at an HF festival. It's just not happening because I don't want to be involved in that anymore. I don't want to be a part of that scene. So I understand where Mike Krzyzewski's coming from. College kids, they're not worried about their, they believe it's like the rules of the mosh pit. Somebody falls down, you help them up, you move on.
Right.
We're all, we're sort of doing something violent towards each. I don't even know if mosh pits still exist. I'm 30 years old. I just don't know if that's still a world. But that was always the rule for me growing up. If there was a mosh pit, somebody got knocked over, you cleared everybody out of the way. If someone was acting like an a-hole and clearly trying to hurt somebody, you and a couple of guys would drag him out, and if you had to, you beat him in the face to let him know you're not allowed to act like this. Get the F out of here. That was the way that it worked. You didn't have to have a rule sheet that was handed to you. It was just simple rules. We're going to go in there, and we're just trying to have fun. And if it looks like somebody isn't having fun, we help them out. Or if it looks like someone's trying to prevent anyone else from having fun, we take care of them and eliminate them from the situation. That's the way that it works. And college kids feel the same way about rushing the floor or rushing the field. They're not going to change their mind over the way that you feel about it.
When they're all on the same side except for the 10 Duke personnel who were out there. And so, yeah, I mean,
but yeah,
I get that they feel unsafe.
If what Virginia did last night was somehow figure out a way to guard the area for Duke and to say when the game ends, get off the floor. Now, this is very difficult because it's so momentary.
Right.
As soon as that horn sounds, these kids are on the floor.
You need like riot police with the shields, building a faux tunnelway essentially.
I mean, it's but even then, it's tough because it's one thing to get the guys that are on the bench off,
right?
But when you got let's say a last second shot is missed, and you got guys on the court,
yeah.
By the time you know that shot's not going in, there's 20 kids that are breathing down your neck.
Like in last night's scenario, the best thing for Duke to do would probably have been to foul Virginia with a second left,
and
knowing that the game was over, and get their guys positioned to exit. But you're not going to have that luxury in every game. Did Miami stay on the court against them? I mean, they were beat 4 times.
Everyone did. NC State did. Miami did. Absolutely.
Yeah.
All 4 times.
I remember NC State because I was a little disappointed in them for doing it.
Hey, Greg, hang on one second. I'm going to get to you. I want to introduce one more topic for Thyrl before I let him go today. This is The Handoff. It's brought to you by Towson Place Liquors. Glenn Clark, Thyrl Nelson with you on the reality. I just said the reality check. It's The Handoff.
Yeah.
That's what it is. It's The Handoff. I'm Glenn. He's Thyrl. This is WNST. The other topic I wanted to introduce. Terrell Suggs was on my show 2 days ago.
I was hoping you were going to ask about this.
I asked him about leadership.
Okay.
In the future of the Ravens defense without Ray Lewis.
Okay.
And sort of his role with that. And he was kind of dismissive of it. Luke Jones wrote about it at WNST.net. He sort of said something more along the lines of, yeah, well, we'll hand out stripes, was his exact quote.
Okay.
The question is, if they're handing out stripes, which stripes is Terrell Suggs getting?
None.
And then where are the stripes going?
That's a much better question, and I guess someone, the Luke Jones or yourself, who have much more of a pulse on the dynamic of the locker room. But as you say it, and I hadn't had a chance to listen to that. I meant to ask you about it yesterday because obviously he's made some inflammatory comments elsewhere. If he is going to be,
it was every market that he went on in because he was doing this tour for this movie that he's got. It seemed like every market he went on in, he had beef with them. Like he had beef with the. Anthony Davis,
tough guy,
in San Francisco. He had beef still with the people in Boston.
Yeah.
But here, I mean, I didn't really have any beef. I didn't really care all that much about, what he feels about Anthony Davis. Here, it was just, we got to talk about the Ravens.
Right. Well, and so with you, if he had cast himself as a leader, if he had said that that's something important to him moving forward, and then went out and represented himself as he did in other markets, that bothers me anyway. Hypocrisy, right? It bothers me a bit too.
I talked about this in the 5 o'clock hour of yesterday's show. I'm over it, and I'm over the people that talk about how entertaining it is, because I get it. There are times where Terrell Suggs is really entertaining, and you understand why his life is going to move him in the direction of movies and television and things like that. He sees himself as an entertainer. He always has. He presumably always will. It's very tough to just accept he's never going to be any ounce of a leader. Yeah. It's tough to say that. You don't, because you've always sort of had this vision in your mind of he's part of the solution in a post-Ray Lewis Baltimore. In a post-Ray Lewis Baltimore, Terrell Suggs is part of the solution. And in a way, he is, but it's only on the field.
Right.
And you're hoping at this point, it's only on the field. To suggest in any remote way that Terrell Suggs is involved with the future of the leadership of this football team just smacks in the face of everything that you know about Terrell Suggs. And it doesn't make him a bad human being. It doesn't mean I don't root for him. I root like hell for him. I hope Terrell Suggs has a 20-sack season next year. I hope he's an absolute monster. But it's looking at the reality of what the Ravens are dealing with. And this is a concern for me, legitimately. And it's a concern because we've been so willing to dismiss it. We've been so willing to say, well, that'll get solved. That'll get... I don't know. When I talk about this fear of what does the post-Ray Lewis Baltimore look like, part of that fear is I really wonder if part of the reason why the Ravens have been so great for so long is just because this is the place where Ray Lewis exists.
Yeah.
That when you walk into this, for whoever it is, part of the reason why we get so much attention paid on this city every week during a National Football League season, why national media types descend upon Baltimore every week, while why it is that every week on this show we're talking to somebody from the NFL Network or ESPN. I don't know that it exists that way in Kansas City. And Kansas City's had good teams during the same stretch.
Right.
I don't know that it exists that way in St. Louis, where they won a Super Bowl during that same stretch. I don't know that it exists the same way in a lot of places. But I think it does in Denver now because they've got Peyton Manning. I think it did in Indianapolis. You've got to have this guy. And it's a reminder that this guy is not going to exist.
Well, he doesn't always have to be rah-rah. I mean, you could probably make the example that Tom Brady is that guy, and I can't imagine him giving a moving
well, yeah, he's not Ray Lewis,
speech.
But
he's sort of a lead-by-example type guy.
Okay, he's not Ray Lewis, but he's definitely more vocal, more fiery than
Flacco.
But I don't even want to compare it to Joe Flacco because that's not fair. He's more than most. He's an enigma of a personality. You're immediately drawn to Tom Brady. And not to say that you're not drawn to Thyrl Suggs, because a lot of people are. Maybe I'm talking about two separate things here.
So, well, let me ask this. If you're looking for a leader, and part of the issue with Suggs is that he's going to be outspoken, and so people are going to hear him whether they choose to listen to him or not, which becomes, maybe an issue for the Ravens to have to tackle. Does that make you feel urgently about having to bring back Ed Reed?
Yeah, I think that's part of the question here.
Okay.
I think it is.
If Reed still wants to play football, I could see that being
I've wavered on this so much. I've wavered on the acceptance that Ed Reed is definitely gone, which was the way that I was for a long time. I've wavered during the Super Bowl run, which was, this is a big moment, and this is probably the reason why Ed Reed sticks around, and you feel compelled to work something out, and then you get away from the euphoria of that, and you're like, okay, let's just be realistic about it. All the stuff I said before is still real. You don't want to embarrass Ed Reed by not really offering him any money. You cannot pretend like you can keep Ed Reed around and sacrifice Anquan Bolden in order to do that. You absolutely don't want to sacrifice a Donnell Ellerbe in order to keep an Ed Reed around.
You almost need, if you look at Suggs as sort of a lunatic, you almost need somebody capable of shouting him down.
And that's the best argument for the future of Ed Reed right now. And I hate the fact that I'm saying that because I'm talking about a Hall of Fame player. Mm-hmm. But the argument for Ed Reed isn't related to football right now. It can't be, or else you're going to lose the argument. If your argument for why Ed Reed has to stay in Baltimore is related to football, I'm going to beat you on that. Because unless he's just saying, I'll pay for $2 million or whatever you could pay to any other safety that could come in here and play, all you're getting out of Ed Reed at this point is name value and capability. Capability. He's capable of playing the position still. This isn't Ed Reed can't do it, too old, no way. There's a big difference in Ed Reed and Deion Sanders when he showed back up in Baltimore. Huge difference. Ed Reed is still a capable safety in the National Football League, but he is by no means Ed Reed. And in sort of it's like calling Tiger Woods right now. It's kind of laughable. That guy that plays golf right now isn't really Tiger Woods. It's some, the attention we pay him is ridiculous. He's just some golfer. That's all he is. He's some guy. He's Bo Van Pelt. He's whatever he is. That's who he is. Ed Reed, it's sort of the same way. The difference between Ed Reed and Jamesy Hedigbo on the football field at the moment is not significant.
Right.
It exists, but it's not significant. So you're not winning the argument related to football, but you might win the argument in relation to the need to have that type of guy around.
And is he that guy? I mean, I don't know.
Well, he's not Ray Lewis, but I think
he's much more quietly. You need someone who's capable of sort of shouting down Thyrl Suggs. It's interesting because I remember, especially when I heard these comments, I remember what Drew wrote after the New England game about, Suggs' reaction. And I think that, to a degree, you have to get used to winning. And maybe Suggs is a guy who has been sort of, in that underdog position for so long that he doesn't understand. But he's the hunted now. There's no reason for him to be paying attention to anyone else because they're all fighting to get where he is once again. And so, to call attention to New England or to call you, I'm not saying that what he said was wrong. I just kind of wish that he hadn't said it, and or I don't think that the old act like you've been there before type mentality.
Right,
I think,
and the argument back from Ravens fans is, well, he's just saying what we all feel.
Sure,
in a way,
possibly.
I
just wish he hadn't. Right, it went without saying.
There's not a part of me that doesn't think that there are a lot of people in that area that are just the worst.
But he's not bringing anything new to the table. Is I guess my.
Well, yeah, okay, fine. Except for someone's going to say, well, I got a chuckle out of it, and I was entertained by it, and I get that. And there's some relevance to it, but the relevance is this guy's got to be a big part of the reason why you're continuing to be successful the next couple of years. And he's been able to do it to now. He's been able to be the sort of clown prince and get away with it. But part of that was that Ray Lewis was always around at the same time. And Ray Lewis would literally look at Thyrl Suggs and say, don't dress that way. Show up tomorrow and wear something. And Thyrl Suggs would sort of give back the eye roll or the whatever. But it'd be interesting to see how he would show up to dress the next day. It'd just be interesting to see how he might not have liked it, but he took stuff from Ray Lewis too. Now, he might not have been Ray Rice in the, yes, sir, whatever you say, sir, I'll do. But he absolutely took stuff from Ray Lewis just from being around and soaking it in. And Ray Lewis didn't go out of his way to every day try to deal with Thyrl Suggs. He would just sort of shake his head at Thyrl Suggs and say, I don't know what you're doing, guy. I don't get it. It's not for me. Let me give you one piece of advice. Don't do this tomorrow.
Right.
Try to change this one part of what you're doing. Otherwise, just be you.
So in the hierarchy of skills, if not Ed Reed, who do you think sort of gets the stripes?
The problem is I don't know.
It doesn't seem like it's not his way.
Well, he's definitely not that type of guy. He's definitely not that type of person, that type of player, that type of anything. That's not who he is. Right. Bernard Pollard took on a lot of this last year, but Bernard Pollard certainly is by no means a great player.
Sure.
I mean, there's just no doubt about that. Bernard Pollard is good and nothing more than good, and a guy that could be a year away from being a salary cap expense himself.
Sure.
I don't know.
He's also a guy that two teams in a very short period of time have felt some reason to part company with. So, we may not have the full read on who Bernard Pollard is behind closed doors.
Correct. I think that there is a level of, there are some things about how Bernard Pollard handles himself that I probably wouldn't love either.
Yeah.
Maybe not Thyrl Suggs, maybe not clownish.
Sure.
But things that I would probably say, I don't know how much I love that. Again, all of this is the acceptance of, if you want to dismiss how special what Ray Lewis brought to the city was, if as an outsider, you've completely missed it. You've completely missed it, because he was the perfect person to play this role. Now, Ed Reed was probably better than we realized he was the last couple of years. I think Kevin Van Valkenburg did a good job of explaining that in the ESPN piece that he wrote right before the Super Bowl. He probably took on a lot more of that than we ever gave him credit for, especially as Ray Lewis wasn't around for
Reed's sort of the old sage, though. Like, he sits at the mountaintop, and you got to kind of go up there to seek his advice.
Right.
He's not going to throw it at you.
Correct. But he's a guy that there's a lot of guys in that locker room that have told me, look, man, I like Ray, and Ray's told me things, but when I've had an issue, I've gone to Ed.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, when I've needed advice, he's just the guy that I go to, and I think it makes a compelling argument.
Can it be an offensive guy?
Maybe. I think Anquan Bolden, if he's back, has to take on some of that. But again, he's a guy that could be gone in a year.
Or tomorrow.
Really tough. Really tough. It's an interesting question. We'll continue to talk about it during the course of today's show. Handoff has been brought to you by Towson Place Liquors in the Towson Place Shopping Center just across from Walmart. 10% today. 10% discount on all purchases of $20 or more. Stop in and see them in the Towson Place Shopping Center just across from Walmart. Go see their new place, Angel's Cut Wine and Spirits, 5725 Richards Valley Road in Ellicott City. Same great ownership, same great deals. Towson Place Liquors and Angel's Cut Wine and Spirits. Thyrl Nelson, have yourself a fantastic weekend. If you're on hold, hang tight. I'll get to you. If you want to get in, 410-481-1570.
I'm digging in for the World Baseball Classic and asking you for the check, please.
Go Giants, Tay Perry!